it's Luke back for our first dose of some Sunday night football. We're going to be going over our showdown picks for Draftkings for the matchup on Sunday night football between the Chicago Bears and LA Rams. This will be the first time we get to see Matthew Stafford in action for the blue and gold. Somebody I expect to absolutely thrive in this potent offense. I'm on record as saying I think Matthew Stafford is going to break the passing yard record here in 2021. He has the extra game, has a great chance in that potent offense as well. So looking to see if that's going to happen. I expect a strong performance against the Chicago team, and I don't expect it to be the most competitive game per se. I mean, we have a 46.5 point over under, but a 7.5 spread to the LA Rams. So expect the Rams to dictate just about every phase of this game, but we have those DFS contests out there, a lot of money to be made as well, and a lot of people are going to be playing Sunday Night Showdown just because it's the first weekend. So definitely going to be a bigger edge this weekend than most. A lot of casuals are going to be in there, especially more than most weeks. So let's hop into the picks. We're going to be going over our top 3 picks from each team to start this off. Then we're going to hop into my top 3 value picks, as well as my top 3 picks for the captain slot. So gonna touch on just about everything, but with that being said, let's hop right into the picks for each team. We'll start off with the away team, the Chicago Bears. At number 3, we have Jimmy Graham at $4,600. I really like the salary, and you saw plenty of red zone looks here in 2020. That was with worse quarterback play, not very consistent, but the only consistent piece in the offense really was Jimmy Graham, at times David Montgomery as well. I don't expect him to be the focal point of the offense, especially outside of the red zone. We're expecting Cole Kmet to take quite a step forward, but in terms of red zone targets, Jimmy Graham is still going to be the guy. At this point of his career, obviously has lost a step in terms of his speed, his explosiveness, but still has very short hands, a very good vertical as well. So I expect him to make an impact here in the red zone. So in a lower scoring game for the Chicago Bears, perhaps Jimmy Graham grabs 1 or 2 of the touchdowns for them. So I definitely like him on that side of the football. At number 2, though, Allen Robinson. If you're going to pay up for anybody on this team, especially above $8,000, $9,000, I'm taking a primary look at Allen Robinson. He costs $10,200 this week, so you're definitely not getting much salary relief there, but by far the best pass catching option for Chicago. He's almost QB proof. We've seen it here in the past. He's had some atrocious QB play, but has still ended up a top 15 receiver in the NFL. So respectable numbers for sure. Definitely has the talent level that we're looking for. Obviously the price tag just isn't great. You know, he's still worth rostering. Definitely capable of putting up 150 yards and a touchdown, perhaps even 2. So definitely going to be making my player pool, but in terms of the best option for the Chicago Bears, it's David Montgomery for me. The price tag's a lot better at $8,400, and he's also somebody who, if Allen Robinson's going to be QB proof, David Montgomery is going to be matchup proof, perhaps even game script proof. Again, we're expecting the Bears to be down for a majority of this game, and Montgomery's production is heavily skewed towards his receiving stats. Somebody who gets plenty of targets out of the backfield, is going to catch 5 or 6 balls in a game, and if they're going to be behind for most of this game, there's going to be plenty of targets for David Montgomery. So it's going to be a little bit of a unique option as well. I think a lot of people are writing him off because they're expecting it to be a lopsided game. But last year, this was a guy who was top 5 in receptions for running backs, ended up being a top 10 fantasy running back. So had a sneaky good year. He's only $8,400. So I'm going to have him in most of my lineups, about 85% of them this week. And I even like him at the captain slot. We'll get to that here in a second, but definitely my favorite option for the Chicago Bears. In terms of the Rams side of the football, my favorite option by far is going to be Robert Woods. You can see that there at number 1. He's coming in at a DK price of $9,000. He's the best down the field threat for the Rams there. If you take a look at number 3 of Cooper Kupp, he's somebody who's a little bit more of a short route specialist. He's only $8,800, so only get a $200 price decrease there. I do expect fireworks from the offense, so I expect plenty of yardage to go around. But I prefer Woods over Kupp just because of the downfield threat. Again, Kupp's more of that short field, short route specialist. And Matthew Stafford is somebody who loves to throw the ball downfield. Has the highest percentage of downfield targets of anybody in the NFL. Has been that way for 5 or 6 years now. And I don't expect that to change now that he's over in LA. Obviously has a different offensive coordinator, different coach with Sean McVay. McVay is definitely a very creative offensive mind. But with Matthew Stafford, he's obviously going to cater it towards his specialty, which again is throwing the ball downfield. Stafford has by far one of the best arms in the NFL. So you can see he makes my list here at number 2. He's at a DK price of $11,600, which ouch, right? That is not a good price tag for any player, let alone a quarterback in a low-scoring affair, but I still think it's worth going to. Again, I think he's going to break the passing yard record this year, has the extra game to do so, is also going to be in a very high-volume offense. So as a result, I definitely am targeting him in fantasy. If he puts up 400-plus yards, you're getting the bonus for 300 at 400 yards as well. Potentially could throw 4 or 5 touchdowns as well. So like jamming him into lineups, perhaps not so at the captain mark. We'll get to that here in a second, but definitely like him in terms of his floor. Somebody's going to probably go out, score 25 fantasy points at the very least in this matchup. They do have good pass rushers on Chicago, so could perhaps give them a problem, but this offense, is led by Sean McVay, somebody who's a very good offensive mind. I expect him to be able to handle that. There'll be a lot of screen passes, a lot of short passes to kind of mitigate that passing rush threat. So I expect them to thrive. So that's why you see all passing targets there for the Rams. You may expect me to have more running targets because I do expect an onslaught. Again, we're looking at the Rams winning by at least a touchdown for Vegas. I think it could be 2 or even 3 touchdowns in terms of the spread, but they're going to get most of that yardage and most of that production done with the wide receivers. Sure, when they gain a lead, they're probably going to rely on Darrell Henderson Jr., perhaps even Sony Michel, which we'll get to here in a second, but those guys are probably going to put up 50 to 60 yards, maybe a touchdown at best. With these wide receivers, you're looking at well over 100-yard upside as well as multiple touchdown upside as well. So that's why I'm going to them. I think the running backs have a decent floor going into this game, but these are our GPP picks. This is our Draftkings Showdown picks. So we're not looking for floor. We're looking for ceiling. So that's why I'm focusing on the pass catchers for both games, to be honest with you. Now getting into some of our value and flyer picks. At number 3, we have Sony Michel. He's only $4,800, which is the primary beneficiary here. Somebody who's poised to handle the number 2 running back role for the Rams, but somebody who could definitely get the hot hand here in week 1 and get a lot more carries than we expect. They invested a good amount of draft capital into acquiring Sony Michel. So as a result, by the end of the year, I expect him to be the number 1 guy out there in LA. Darrell Henderson Jr. obviously has more experience in the offense. Somebody who is used to the play calling of Sean McVay. But again, we have Matthew Stafford leading the offense now. So how consistent is that offense really going to look? Again, I expect them to cater it towards Stafford's specialties. So as a result, that could really mean nothing. All that experience could be for none. Michel's clearly the back with more talent, somebody they've invested a lot more into. So if he ends up getting the bulk of the carries here in week 1, I don't think anybody would be surprised. So the price tag is great. Somebody I'm definitely including in a good amount of my lineups, potentially even in a cash situation. And number 2, this is far from a cash play. Obviously, on the opposite end of the spectrum here with Brashard Perriman of the Chicago Bears. Yes, was just signed by the Bears. Is in the player pool for this contest, so good to see that they included him, even though he was a late addition to the team. He is $1,200, and this is a pure flyer play. Darnell Mooney right now is listed as questionable, was not able to practice on Friday, still has the injury designation as well as of right now. Perriman is far from an elite wide receiver, but if Darnell Mooney goes down, he's going to be thrust immediately into a number 3 or number 4 receiver role. At $1,200, he's essentially the bare minimum. Essentially, the guys priced below him are on the practice squad at this point, so he's going to be on the starting 53, we imagine, come tomorrow. So Perriman, again, a very good flyer play there. Somebody who's a down the field threat. I don't expect the Bears offense to be airing it out very much. I expect maybe 200, 250 passing yards at the very most for Andy Dalton. But perhaps Perriman ends up getting a deep ball, though. He definitely has that in him, has the speed in the frame that you're looking for in terms of a down the field threat. But at number 1, speaking of down the field threats, who better than Djax, right? He ends up being added to this LA offense, only costs $1,400 here on the slate. And there's one thing that Matthew Stafford loves, and that's his down the field guys. Somebody who loves to throw the ball down the field. Deshaun Jackson, as a result, is going to get plenty of targets this year. But he's a clear number 3 or perhaps even number 4 option for the Rams. He's going to play a role in this offense. We know he's going to be the down the field threat. He's going to come in to spread the field at times, especially in 3 wide receiver sets. So I definitely think he's an intriguing pick. Somebody who, just like Brashard Perriman, go out, have a 70 or an 80-yard touchdown, and we wouldn't really be that surprised. They're very big, very fast targets. So as a result, he's my number 1 value play for this slate. But now talking about the captain slot, so you can see at number 3 we have Matthew Stafford. He makes my captain list, but he's by far He's far from my favorite captain. You see, he costs $17,400 when you put him in that slot. And that's the primary concern here with Stafford, right? When you invest $17,000 into a captain, you really need him to go out and be by far the most optimal play on the slate. It handicaps you elsewhere. So I'm going to have some lineups where I have him as the captain. Again, I expect him to put up a ton of passing yards, perhaps even 3 or 4 touchdowns. But even if he does so, a lot has to fall into place for him to be the optimal captain. Again, if there's 4 touchdowns thrown, all it takes is 1 or 2 touchdowns to be caught by one player, 150 yards or something like that receiving, and he ends up optimal. So I'll have him at captain, but he's not my favorite. By far my favorite captains, though, we talked about this a little bit before, are Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. They're right around the same price point, right in that mid $13,000 range, but both are great options for this slate. I expect one of them to go for about 150 yards, a touchdown, potentially even 2, and whichever one that ends up being is going to be the optimal captain play. We see it week in and week out. You obviously need somebody to have a solid score at captain, but he can't cripple your lineup. So at $13,000, you still have plenty of room with the rest of your spots to take in some quality players. Maybe match in one of those flyer plays that I mentioned, and then fill it out with some studs from our list. So definitely like those two the most. Cooper Kupp's going to get plenty of targets, plenty of catches. So if you're in a cash game, I definitely like Cooper Kupp there. But in GPP formats, you can see at number 1 we have Robert Woods. Again, he's the down the field threat, somebody who's going to get more yak as well. But I like both options there. That's all I've got for the showdown picks, guys. Let me know in the comments who your favorite captain play is for the slate. Maybe it's Matthew Stafford. You're willing to pay up that whole way to $1,700. Maybe it's one of those pass catchers I mentioned. Or maybe it's someone completely off the board. Maybe you see the Bears being a little bit more competitive in this game. David Montgomery getting a bunch of yardage or something like that. Let me know in the comments. We'd love to hear about it. And as always, I really appreciate the viewership, guys. It just absolutely means a lot to me for you guys to view this and everything. If you guys could leave a like as well, it would also help me out a ton. It helps me out with growing the channel. It lets me know that you guys like the content that I'm producing as well, so I know to make more in the future. So go ahead and do that if you haven't already. Also, if you haven't subscribed to this point, make sure to do so. When you guys subscribe, you guys get notifications from when I upload videos. So make sure to do that so you don't miss any of the content I post in the future as well. Tomorrow, we're going to have a preview out for the Monday Night Football slate. That'll be out before the 1 o'clock slate happens. But until then, good luck, and I'll see you then.